everyone, and welcome to the Lizard Brains podcast. I'm your host, DJ Alessandrini. I'm joined by my co-host, Tom Gorman. Tom, how's it going?
Dude, I'm good. What's that on your arm?
It's a boo-boo in the shape of an
You got a
ice cream
smudge on
cone.
you.
It looks like an ice cream cone, doesn't it?
A little. Is that what it's supposed to look like? Guys, DJ got a tattoo. That's what we're talking about.
It's an
Great audio content.
It's an iceberg. There's this picture. Here, I'll post it in the chat if I can find it. Here we are. Oh, I ruined it. There's this picture that I love, and it's not posting. There we go. And it's like a picture of a podium, and you're behind it, and there's first, second, and third on the podium, and they're all like celebrating, and there's like people like cheering them on. There's like a little crowd, and it has like a cutout where you can see beneath the ground, and the podium just keeps going. Like it's not just 3 steps; it's like infinite amount of steps, and it says what we see and what we don't see, and what we don't see is beneath the surface. And all the blocks that would like make up the podium are different things like passion, listening, sacrifice, feedback, courage, like just a bunch of like things like building blocks of success. And I don't remember when I first saw this picture, but that wouldn't make a good tattoo. But it's essentially an iceberg where like there's stuff on the surface, but there's a lot more underneath from what's happening. And anytime I see the success of somebody, so somebody has like a great weekend and they win a thing or whatever, I know that that's not just like, oh my God, I can't believe it happened. It's like that person has been working so hard for that to happen. And all we get to observe is the surface level, it happening. We didn't get to see the stuff behind the scenes, the long nights, the early mornings, the blood, the sweat, the tears. We didn't see any of that. All we see is like that surface level, like achievement. So I, for years I wanted, like a tattoo to just kind of remind me of like, just all we see is the surface, but we don't see everything else.
I love that.
So
Was it painful?
yeah, I'm a big baby. I'm like,
oh no.
Like Christine has a couple tattoos. And like some of her tattoos are so complicated where she like sat there getting tattooed for like over 8 hours. And I don't know how she did that, Tom. Like mine lasted probably, I don't know exactly how long it was. I blanked out, but it was probably like 15 minutes. And I'm just like, whoa, throw in the towel. We're done with this. It was like, I don't know. It's like probably like a dozen lines or so. It's not very complicated. And yeah, I was that was pretty painful, Tom.
I think it's like flow state. I have one as well. Most people don't really see it that often, but it's like this line down my forearm. And it doesn't have any significant meaning like yours does. I just like the way it looked. But I kind of liked it. And I was like, I don't like pain or like inconvenience usually. But I was like, it's like but I was like, this actually felt kind of nice. I just like disappeared into the sensation of it. It reminded me of those, those like shock pens that you play pranks with people on and they like buzz a little bit.
It does if you ever feel like that.
Yeah, if you ever push through that like shock of it in your hand, not literal shock, but like the surprise of it hitting you, like, and you just like focus on what it feels like, it's not that bad. That's what it reminded me of.
So like Darian has a gigantic like tiger looking thing on his, I can't remember. Yeah. Like on his chest, and it's freaking gorgeous. And there's so much detail. So there's so many lines that went into that. Darian, I don't know how you did that. Like you're wild.
I remember when he's in the live chat. That's why we're talking about him. But I remember when he got that, he was in rough shape.
Yeah.
Rough shape. I think he was like sick for a day.
Taylor Warger says, last tattoo I got was on my ribs. Talk about flow state with an artist. Tom gets it. Darian said you have to be in a dark place. No, seriously. I'm like after experiencing that, Darian, I literally thought of you and went, man, I hope Darian's okay, because that like in order to like be able to get through that, like you had to be going through some shit. You know what I mean? So yeah. Darian, I hope you're good, man.
That's funny. Well, outside of your tattoo, you had like a pretty big weekend. You got a whole new driveway.
Yeah. I think when we recorded last time, did I talk about the Chevy Bolt?
You did. You told us you were doing a whole fleet swap.
Yes,
Now
but
it's finally
I
happened.
don't think I picked it up yet because we
You
recorded on
hadn't,
Monday.
no?
Yeah. So I went and picked it up. I picked that up on Wednesday. Guys, I freaking love my Chevy Bolt. It is such a cool car. It is all right. It has the crappiest tires ever on it. Like EV tires have like zero grip, but that's part of the charm. You're at like slip angle all the time. You're just making squealy noises in parking lots. Looking like from afar, you look like a normal human being, but in the car, you feel like a hooligan because it's going like everywhere. And you can be going 40 miles an hour, and if you floor it, you start doing a burnout. Like that's how powerful the thing is.
That sounds crazy. Are you saying, hang on, you're saying that all it takes to have fun with a car is really, really bad skinny tires?
This is not a hot take for Tom. Everyone knows
Yeah.
this. uh, Taylor Wargo asks, is the power weight still Sunday Cup? Dude, there's no way. This thing's so fast. It's so fast compared
Yeah.
to a Honda Fit. There's no freaking way. I think it makes like 200 horsepower, like 260 something pounds of torque. But because it's electric, it's like so instantaneous. And I just feel like I'm like zipping around everywhere. It like feels like super nimble. It's like it's literally the perfect commuter car ever. It's so good. If it charged faster at like fast charging stops, uh I think it would be perfect. It would literally be perfect. I would never need another car.
Hmm.
It's so good.
We'll have to do like 6-month updates or something on your Chevy Bolt life.
Like, cause I'm all excited
Like
about it.
those extended drive,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
those
yeah.
extended what? Yeah, like those magazine reviews.
Yeah. Yep. I super dig it. I really like it. It has like 80 some thousand miles on it, but it's still like there's no clunks, there's no rattles, there's no creaks. Just it's just a good car. It has a newer battery because of the recall. So I don't
Right.
have an 80,000 mile battery, but yeah, it's awesome. And then on Saturday during a course walk, I bought another car. So
I love Did you guys like do the transaction during the course walk?
he was on one side of the course and I was on the other side of the course, and I like PayPal'd Peter the money while I was course walking.
That's
And
awesome.
then I saw him look at his
How wa-
phone, and then he started looking around for me.
how was autocrossing your own car for the first time?
Tom,
Well, tell us what happened. Tell us the whole weekend
okay.
story, I guess.
Well, I drove D Street on Saturday with Peter, and on Sunday, so Saturday, I went to the Pittsburgh autocross event with Ito, and he was going to help me get it back to my house, and we were hanging out for the weekend. It was fun to hang out with Ito. And oh, also, I was trying to hypermile the Bolt home. And so I was drafting behind Ito, like 2 feet off the bumper. He was in the FRS, and I was in the Bolt, just like no AC on. I'm just like, how far can it go? I'm like drenched in sweat because it's like over 100 degrees in the car. I'm just being a doofus, Tom. You're shaking your head like, what is wrong with you? Nobody knows. Nobody
Pretty
knows,
much.
Tom. Yep. Um. Anyways,
You just said you don't like pain.
yeah, but like it felt like I was in a race car because it was hot and I was in a car and I was sweating. So I'm like, yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. I was LARPing as a race car driver in my Chevy Bolt hypermiling at 60 miles an hour on my way home.
You and Eric are something else. He does that shit in his
Yeah, he
Insight too.
does. He does. There's something about it, like just being efficient.
Dude, when you download an app, I'm gonna have questions. Because he has an app. If you download an app to track your mileage and stuff, we're
Uh,
gonna have to have a talk.
I,
That's some car guy stuff right there. So be
dude,
careful.
okay, I kind of thought about it because I drove a lot of miles this week. Probably close to 1,000 miles, and it was all electric. And I kind of want to keep track of how much money I save every year by having an electric car. So
Okay.
it,
You should.
if Fuely, the app that Eric uses, I believe that's the one that he uses. Darian just pointed it out. I think that would be kind of interesting. Christine, the accountant, goes spreadsheet. Um,
Yeah.
so
So how much was your hypermiling?
well, so I don't think the Bolt. I think it sat around for like a year before I bought it, because it's getting better as I drive it, like at tracking how many miles are left. But it was very confused Also, I let Peter Schnorr drive it during lunch, and he like kept doing like acceleration, like full throttle runs in it. And I,
Attaboy, Peter.
yeah,
Attaboy.
well, dude, it's surprisingly quick, and it's so instantaneous that it's like it's a little addicting, right? So, but I had to remind
Yep.
him, I'm like, hey, I have just enough range to get home, so like, please stop. It's basically how
Yeah.
that went down. And so I was getting a little too hot, so I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna turn the AC on." And I had like 30 extra miles before, like I had 30 extra miles indicated that I needed to get home. So I'm like, oh, "I'll just turn the AC on. It should be fine." Turn the AC on. It dropped to 20 below miles of getting home, and I'm like, "Okay, well that's not gonna work." So I turn the AC off, and I would just open the windows every once in a while. But when you open the windows, and if it was just sitting there, you could see like the kilowatts being used like go up because you had extra drag. So I didn't want to like I'm like I'm gonna for sure get home. I'm not gonna stop and charge. So and look, I know everyone listening to the podcast right now, they're like, this sounds stupid. I'm never gonna have an electric car. Right? Is that what we're getting with? Is that can somebody in the chat tell me that that's
No,
what they're
no,
hearing?
no. I'm amused at your entertainment with like that aspect of owning that car. That's what I'm giggling
Yeah,
at.
it's like a little bit of a game, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
um so anyway, so uh Ito gets in front of me so I can draft him. So we draft for probably like 45 minutes, and then I think this would be the dumbest way to get pulled over in two cars that I like technically own but don't legally own yet. Like they're kind of registered but not like completely registered cuz like I haven't gotten like the documentation and stuff yet.
You have a
And
PayPal receipt for one of them, yeah.
yeah, I have like a PayPal transaction for the car that Ito's driving. So I was like, okay, we don't need the hypermile anymore. Also, I'm not even sure how much it's doing because I'm like literally looking over the FRS. So, so like,
Yeah.
how much wind is the FRS actually blocking, right? So I stopped doing that, and then when I'm about 50-ish miles from home, or I'm 30 something miles from home, and it says I have 50 miles left of range, and I'm like, that should be enough to turn on the AC. So I turn on the AC, it drops to like 40 miles, and I'm like, cool. So the last half hour ish of the drive, I'm sitting in the air conditioning. When I get home, I still had like 38 miles of range. So it only used 12 miles of the range in the last like 30 miles of the trip. I could have had the AC on the whole time. I think the car was just confused on like what the actual energy consumption is. I also think that leaving Pittsburgh, you kind of like in between Pittsburgh and Cleveland, I think it's kind of like uphill and then it goes downhill for like the second half of it on average. So
That could do it for sure, yeah.
yeah, so it was indicating that it's like, oh, it's gonna be close, but then like once I like crested that hill, then it was completely fine and everything was good. Teslas take all the information of all the Teslas on the road, and it would know exactly based on like driving habits and efficiency and all the other cars on the road, like what my percentage would be when I get home. It's like a huge advantage of like Teslas compared to like other electric vehicles. So
Hope hopefully that means this one is always overestimating. No, underestimating, right? Because you don't want it to be the other way around where you're like, I have 30 miles of range, and then 15 miles later you're on the side of the road dead.
yeah, um, it gives you like a high number and a low number, and then there's like a
Mhm,
middle
mhm.
number, and it's generally pretty close to that middle number. Is like I'm starting to like trust it. I've only had the car for a week now, so like I'm still like learning little aspects about it. It grades like your technique, and I'm like getting better. Like you can regen, but if you regen like a lot, like so if you're like terminal braking like into like stoplights, you don't get as much like efficiency than if it's like kind of a
You have
slow.
the you have the thumb regen button, right?
It's a paddle behind the steering wheel that's like extra regen, but you put it in like a
Yeah.
one pedal mode where if you start lifting off the pedal, it starts to regen, and that's the obvious way. You know how that's like the ideal way of driving the car around is the one pedal mode, and once you get used to it, like you can't go back. Um, and it doesn't mess me up when driving another car. I thought like maybe it'll feel weird when I jump into like basically when I jumped into the FRS and was like, oh yeah, it's just a different car. It drives different. Like I didn't it wasn't like it didn't feel weird to drive like a normal car afterwards. Um,
Yeah.
so the okay, I was talking about the one pedal, the paddle efficiency. I was going somewhere with this.
I was asking you if you have the regen, and you're saying unless you come breaking heavily into everything,
Yeah. So
something.
you start to think about how much the tires are working on the road during like regens, because any kind of slip or any kind of extra load into the tires that turns into like thermal energy or friction into the road and not back into the battery pack. So like you're like kind of like trying to blend the amount of uh, like drag that the regen is getting for like optimal efficiency. I remember the thing I was gonna say. You know how when you're stopping at a stoplight and you're like working on your braking and like where you have no like kickback on the vehicle from like the front springs like unloading? The regen
Yep.
brakes does it perfect every time. You just like lift off the throttle, and the way it slows down, and when it comes to a stop, it never kicks back. It's the smoothest stop. It's a human couldn't do it ever. It could not do it this smooth.
Dang.
I can't wait for you to drive it, Tom. I know you drove like a Tesla around, but I think the Bolt would surprise you.
I had one as a rental car last year, actually. I don't remember if I told the story, but I had the exact same thing where I got it as a rental car for Pittsburgh. I drove it from the airport to the track. I think I was only there for the weekend, so I was like maybe using it as a golf cart around the track, kind of. But I never thought to recharge it. I didn't really think to even look it up. And by the end, I was leaving, and I pull up the directions, and I think I had like 50 miles of range left, and the airport was 52 miles away, and I was like, uh-oh, uh-oh. So I like started doing the like wild driving, like super hyper miling. I was like bombing down hills at 90 and then like regenerating all the way up the next one, those hills that take you all the way to the airport.
That's
So I
not
got
efficient. Because
it
you're
is absolutely it
because you're
was.
pushing all the air out of the way.
Okay, well I made it. So I make it there, but it went to 0 into the airport. So whatever you're saying, I made it 50 miles and 52 miles of range or whatever, backwards. And the guy's like, "Oh, it's pretty it's 0, huh?" He's like, "How long has it been 0?" It's like, "Well, the whole time I've been in the airport." He's like, "Is it gonna make it to my corral?" Like, I don't know, not my problem anymore. I left.
Was it like low power mode where it wouldn't go fast anymore?
No, but the last little while I was doing like well under the speed limit,
Yeah, gotcha.
like trying to build speed down hills and then like regen up and build speed down and like
Yeah.
that trucker hypermiling thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's good. So then on Sunday, for the first time since 2018, I autocrossed my own car, which is the car that I autocrossed all of like 2021, 22, and 2023 with Peter Schnorr. So it's not like it was a new experience for me, but it was a new experience autocrossing my own car. I had to remember to bring a jack. I forgot a torque wrench. I didn't know I needed one
Oops.
of those.
Yeah.
I felt like such a noob. I like had all these like things that I didn't have to think about when I'm just driving the car. Uh and after driving the D Street car, man, SSC is kind of boring, Tom.
Uh-oh. Oh no.
Well, the
you,
good
you
news
don't
is
regret the car, do you?
no, I don't regret the car. I don't plan on autocrossing the car that much. I mostly plan on just keeping rust off and tracking and doing like there's a track night in America at Nelson's. I've never driven Nelson's before, and it's only 45 minutes away from my house. So not
Sure.
it's a couple Fridays from now. It's like the Friday of the Grid Life event. So I'm gonna go up to Nelson's and do like the track night in America. Um
Nice.
I'm gonna bring it to the chili cook-off, even though I'll be driving Peter Lear's car. But I'm sure at some point I'll get to do some laps in the FRS.
For
Uh,
sure.
yeah. So I just I think it's nice to have a car that I can take out to the racetrack, and I mean, I'm gonna say this, and it's gonna go terribly awry, but it's been relatively reliable. So I just totally
I'm
ruined.
knocking on my
I
wooden sim
totally
rig
just
for you.
ruined the car. I ruined the car. So it was nice while it lasted. Um, But yeah, it will be nice to help keep the rust off. So when I do jump in other people's cars, I'm not knocking off rust when I'm driving their car. I'm just gonna be like dialed and ready to go, like at all times. Like I don't have an excuse to get rusty because I can find something to drive in the off season, something.
Right.
So there's not always going to be snow on the ground, and Nelson Ledges is like right there, and they will. You can basically rent that track, especially in the winter, for like almost nothing. So I just get a couple buddies together and we go do laps. And the thought is I never get rusty. I never have the off season where I get rusty. That's where the FRS comes in.
Yeah. Let me ask on driving the FRS, because you've done the D Street car on purpose. Like every time you can drive the D Street car, that's what you've driven, right? So you've been in that car for like 90% of the year. My read from doing Chicago with you last year in the car you just bought, which is a first gen FRS, versus co-driving the FRS that I just drove, which was a second gen GR86. Did you notice the difficulty in consistency of the second gen car going back to the first gen car? Because the SSC car, when I drove it, was very repeatable, if not a little boring. The D Street car was incredibly hard to be repeatable, repetitive, incredibly hard to repeat what I wanted to do. Did you notice that at all?
I think I think Peter's car is at a point right now where it's very easy.
Okay.
I think Alex's car was a little tough. Um, but like you took Peter's car for one run. Like it was much easier to drive than Alex's car, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, but I also had 8 runs of practice, preparing me in the hard car for the easier car, theoretically. I was
Yeah.
just curious if you noticed how much different they were in that sense, because I remember it being a stark contrast.
They're very
Like
different.
something
Like
about the setup for the SSC car made it drivable, and something about the D Street setup, which I remember from the C Street setup when I used to drive the first gen cars stock, was very difficult to be consistent.
I will say that the pedals and the steering in the first gen car feels better than the second gen car. Like
Mm.
it feels more hydraulic in the first gen, and the brakes just feel like a little bit more communicative in the first gen. So I think eventually when this car blows up its engine, I think I'm gonna put an FA24 in it.
Dude, you should. Andy has one of those, and it is very nice.
Because that's the best part about the second gen. But if I could have all the first gen stuff with the second gen engine, that might be like the ideal twin.
Yeah, and he's got them. I mean, obviously, it's probably not crazy because it's the same uh, brain in theory, but like he's got it. Everything totally works. Speedometer reads, cruise control works. It's just like
Like
he had to
Ace.
modify the wiring harness, I guess, but it was like a really nice car.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, eventually when that engine blows up, I think that's what I'm going to do.
Okay, well, do you want me to unknock on the wood over here about it being reliable, or should I like
It's
knock
just,
that it blows it?
look,
Like, how do we feel?
the FRS is a whatever car. It's not important to my daily operation. So
Yeah,
like anything can happen to that and it's fine. Like if I mean it just means I get a little bit more rusty if something happens to it. But really the point of that car is to be able to slide something around on pavement at any moment. Especially since you found that Shady Bowl oval place. Come on. I made a post in the SSC Facebook group today saying I'm looking for all takeoffs because like $50 an hour I'm gonna burn up right side tires. Hell yeah, brother.
I love the idea you're going to drive 3 hours to come drive around in the speedway with your FRS, your stock FRS.
Dude,
Oh
it'd
my
be so
god,
much fun. We're gonna
I can
do
only imagine the track manager guy being like, "That weird guy with the stock FRS is coming back. It's the 4th day this week. Are you serious?"
it. It's like I like at one point I show up and the car's wrapped all black and it has a number 3 on the side and I'm like, I'm okay, I'm in now.
I'm doing it for Dale. That's great. Well, I'm excited. You're excited about it. Was it fun? Did you have a good event with it, driving with Ito, or
Um
was it like, okay, this is what it is?
so
Well, it
remember
rained.
Yeah, remember after nationals I was talking about like it's so hard to try to do better on my first runs because I only get a first run at once an event. Uh
Yeah.
and I was not happy with my first run. I made a mistake and like mowed over a cone and it was like just not a good first run. And I was like dang it. Okay. The next event I do and I started looking at it and I'm like Man, I think I only have like one or two more autocross events for like the year before like everything shut down.
Yeah.
I was like, cool. I get like two more practices at like my first autocross run, which is like a little frustrating. Uh, but when it started to rain, me and Ito stopped trying so hard, and we just like we would do like a fire drill, like like changing the numbers and like swapping sides and then jumping in the car so we weren't in the rain. And
Mhm.
I laughed so hard my stomach hurt because just like the rule was because it was worsening conditions like as time went on. If anybody beat the previous run's time, then they won. So like even in worse conditions, we were trying to beat each other's times. That's like the game that we made up to have fun.
That's fun.
And at one point, it was like a 3 cone slalom, and you kind of like enter it from the side. So you really just have to avoid like the center cone. And I went to turn, and nothing happened. I was just hydroplaning. So then I lifted, and nothing happened. And then before I even smashed this cone, it took out the center grill, like the plastic grill. So now I got to like glue it back together. Before I
Bummer.
even hit the cone, me and Ito were laughing. Because it was like, what do we do here? Like, we were just hitting, like, there was nothing I could do. I was just going to hit that cone because the last time I went out, that puddle wasn't there, but it was raining hard enough where now there was a lake.
I was at Toledo once and it started to rain for a challenge and it laked up really bad. I remember that.
Yeah. It was only
It's
like,
not as smooth as everyone thinks.
it was only like maybe like 5 minutes since the last time the car was out there doing a lap, and it was wildly different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are fun.
So yeah,
That's good.
we
Sounds
had
like
a
a fun
good time.
weekend.
It was really good. I have a little bit of a hangover from like the whole weekend though, because like it was just hot, and like that rain came in and like really cooled everything down. But it was like 2 days of probably me not drinking enough water, and yeah, Monday was tough. I still have a headache even today from the weekend. I was thinking getting a tattoo would get rid of the headache, but it didn't.
This hurts here instead of up here now.
No, it just hurts both
Or
places.
and both.
Yeah.
Bummer.
Womp womp. Tom, you were at Indy racing IMSA this weekend.
No, I wasn't. I drove. I drove though. Um, yeah, man. I will say I had a little bit of a tough weekend too. So I have a lot of like little stories from it. Not for the reasons you think, but uh like I talked about last week, I got invited to be the sub for Road Shagger Racing, which are friends of mine for a while now. I just realized I've been around these IMSA people for like 7 years, the people I met the first time
Yeah,
that I
cool.
got to race. That's kind of wild to think about. But uh it was a really, really short weekend. I think it was less than 36 hours from first practice start to the end of the race, like in the schedule. So it was going to be really tight. And ultimately, the starting driver Gavin had this like chaotic lap where he made some mistakes that are easy to make when you're starting to run out of bandwidth, and he ran himself out of bandwidth, and then he missed a break point and just like T-boned somebody else out of the race too. So he felt horrible. I didn't get to drive. That was on lap 3. But I don't know. That's what you have to. In my mind, I protect myself from getting my hopes up too much by being like, if I get to drive, that's like the cherry on top more than anything.
Yeah.
So I'm prepared for that to happen. And then when you see it happen, it's not as much of a letdown. It's just like, ah, man, instead of, no, I wanted to drive. It's all about
No.
me, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But the first day we only had practice 1 and practice 2. And coming into a team where these guys have been driving together for like 18 years. John was Gavin's original like coach. They like hit it off, and he basically like worked him through the level of like starting out at track days all the way up to IMSA, right? So over these 18 years, and they've been co-driving in IMSA together for 7 years, I think, since I met them. Yeah, so 7 years. And uh that means they have this rapport that is like freaking locked in, right? Like John knows exactly what Gavin needs. Gavin knows exactly what John's going to do. And it was really freaking cool to watch like an established dynamic of like teammates work together. Especially doing coaching myself and just kind of being like a fly on the wall. I tried to be really, really non-intrusive to what their normal flow would be because John was still there and he was basically functional, except he couldn't really like bend over or lift things, or like he had that abdominal injury. So yeah, I had to like match match that energy and then step into the role of John without disrupting Gavin, which ended up being way harder than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it sounds tough.
And I really like I got in my head on the first day about like it reminded me of that story Kenton told of my first weekend, or I told of Kenton, when I realized like I was in over my head and I'm going to need to work at this a lot harder than I thought. That one was driving. I just thought I was slow. This one was like the pit stop practice, for example, was awful. I could not get it right because he needed me to do exactly what John would do. And stepping into that with like a day of practice was way harder than I thought it was going to be. Um, or even smaller things. Like I realized that I kind of like freaked him out the first thing I did by getting in the car, looking for the power button. For for some reason, the power button is like a green button, and the fire suppression is a normal power switch with a protective flip on it, and then a power switch.
Oh my
Right?
God, did you
You
almost
know what I'm
hit
talking
that?
about? So I literally got in the car and almost set off the fire suppression, like
Oh,
before they could even
stop.
tell me anything. Yeah. And I'm like, what? And it's obviously it's labeled fire suppression. If I would just read things, it'd be fine. But I think I set off a little like
Uh-oh.
I made them nervous right away.
Yeah.
And it's funny in hindsight, but in the moment, I'm sure they were like, oh my God, what the hell did we do bringing this guy in? Um,
I'm
so
sure you
then
overall you were fine, but continue.
yeah, so then we get into the rhythm. I do practice one. I was basically, I was happy with my first practice. I only got 5 laps. Um, but you remember my whole like I want lap 3 to be the lap I can put it on pole.
Yeah.
Lap 3 was my fastest, and it was faster than John's reference lap from the lap before. Uh, in all the key areas, but we were slower on straights because of BOP stuff. So I was like, all right, cool. I'm like on pace. I feel good. But our pace was like solidly mid pack. The Hondas were really, really fast. The Alphas always really, really fast. And then it looked like we were kind of like at the same speed as the Hyundais. But then the Hyundais started to look really fast too. And we were like, mhm. But our engineer, the guy that I've worked with in the past at eEuro Parts, he's still their engineer here. He doesn't really do like quali simulations or anything like that. It's just like we're driving our race car. So it's full of fuel and it's all this, whatever. So practice one's done. We start doing our driver change practice. And that's when I kind of get in my head. It's like, I can't get this thing right because I was trying to like root cause analysis why I was having so many issues. And it was simply down to when Gavin and John drive together, Gavin has a seat insert, John has a seat insert because Gavin's a little shorter than me and John's like 6'4". So when they get out of the car, Gavin gets out, they pull the seat insert, it flings all the belts to where they're supposed to go. John puts his insert in and then he gets in and he could do his thing. We're supposed to be targeting 25 seconds from the time the car stops to the time the door closes for the driver change, because that's how long it takes the tires when they do a tire change only. So if we're like fueling, it's 52 seconds, no problem. But you need to be able to driver change in the time of a tire change, right? Okay, so is this making sense? I'm rambling.
No, this is making sense.
You're with me?
I think the part that I'm not with you is why was what made the driver change hard?
Yeah,
Because
so I'm getting there.
I'm
So
imagining it's like if you imagine somebody has a dance partner and it's a choreographed dance and you have to learn it on the fly.
pretty much.
Yeah.
But the reason I was struggling so much, it was kind of like mainly one thing, but a little bit of a second. I was using Gavin's seat insert because it was the one that fit me better. So instead of having to take the seat insert out and put the new one in, it was just there. So Gavin's used to getting out, taking the seat insert with him. Instead, he's leaving it there, which leaves all the belts where they fall instead of puts all the belts where the seat insert flings them out of the way, right? And they normally take those that stretchy medical tubing or like a bungee cord maybe, and they'll like
Or like
strap all the belts so that when you
magnets, you throw it to the roof or
yeah, yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
So they didn't have that because normally the seat insert swap does that for them. Well, since we weren't swapping seat inserts, the belts just kept getting. I've literally never spent more time tangled in a race car in my entire life, and it was starting to
and you're
really.
and you're like looking for the belts and you can't find them. And
Yes, yes, but then the extra layer on top of that was they had me in a cool shirt, which I never wear, so I have an extra tail hanging out from my like crotch, and then I also have basically Gavin didn't want to change his system, so I had to match what he was used to. And anytime I would kind of ask for like, could we try this? It was like, I don't want to change the system, you know? So he was pretty inflexible, but like for a good reason. He's used to what he's used to. and then I'm like tangled in this like nets of stuff that I'm like, this should not be a problem. This is not a problem in any other car. And for some reason,
Yeah, yeah.
because there's no bungee cords holding the belts out of my way, and I have this extra bit of cool shirt on me and all this, like, I just got tangled in the car a bunch during driver change practice, to the point that I could tell Gavin was getting over it. He's like, I need to be out of this suit. I'm hot. Like, I'm tired of doing this.
Yeah.
And the only person who kept messing it up was me. And it was really, really frustrating. And I could not, like, the last layer of it was I have to undo his cool shirt and his radio and the window net when I open the door. So it's like window net. There's 2 points of pickup for it. Then I pull the cool shirt. Then I have to pull the radio with my left hand, and I have to grab the shoulder belt from his left shoulder with my right so it doesn't fall in the seat. And I kept doing it backwards because I'm like a little dyslexic with my lefts and rights, and tangling them. And then I would tangle him in the car and he couldn't get out.
Oh no.
Like, I would just kept blowing it. So I realized, like, I have to like really focus it. Like, this isn't like Tom has fun and screws around with Instagram stories and does an IMSA race. Like, I have to work on my, like, I was doing mental visualization and like
Of just the driver
playing with
change. Like
just the driver change, like
the
going through it
driving is
over
the
and
easy
over.
part for Tom O'Gorman. Right to left, oh my God.
Yeah. So then in practice 2, practice 1, I drive first, he swaps, and he finishes the session, which means that's the driver change that would never happen in the race. Practice 2, he starts, and then I swap in. So we do like a live driver change during the practice as a simulation. And I fucked it up because I messed up my lefts and my rights. I tangled him in the car. We got it all back together. I get out on the track, and I'm feeling like really in my head that I can't even get this. We've already done this for an hour of practice, and I still messed it up in the practice. So then I'm like, kind of spun up, and I get on the track and I start getting my rhythm. Well, there's another new variable here. We had 3 spotters. I have no idea why. Plus the engineer, Eric, on pit lane. So there's 4 different voices going around the track, and it's these guys that are used to spotting for like the Rolex and like the GTP cars and stuff. So like one of them spots for the Lexus team all the time. The other one spots for a different team. So they're used to talking and talking and talking and talking, and that's their job, right? So I hear like GS car 60 back, GS car 30 back. It's car lengths. GS car 10 back. I'm like, it's not a GTP car. I can see it's coming. It's not that fast,
Yeah.
So basically, there's a lot of information coming. That wasn't that big of a deal. But for some reason, when I went out for the next session, they started giving me like coaching notes. That was like the kind of thing that I might say to a new driver that's like, get in a rhythm, or like, it's just like, are they coddling me? I don't know if they're like, think I look like
Oh
I know
my
what I'm
God.
doing, or
Tom,
maybe
you were so in your head.
I was so in my head. So then I'm like, I'm kind of ignoring them and trying to get in my rhythm again. And then they start telling me this is at the end of an hour-long practice session. So the tires are as old as they could possibly be in a race simulation. And my laps feel so slow, and the car just feels kind of like junk. And then after they've stopped giving me the coaching notes, right, they just start giving me, okay, that lap was X faster than every other car on track. And it felt like they were trying to like encourage me, like, you were the fastest car that lap. Oh, you were the fastest car that lap. And like I had to go look afterwards to make sure they weren't just coddling me, because I was so upset about like, this sounds more dramatic in the storytelling than it was in my head. But all that to say, I had like a day where I realized like I need to put my head down, work on myself. And then by the end of the day, I was so exhausted with like that level of mental effort going on in my head, or mental turmoil, whatever you want to call it, that, my parents actually came to the race. And instead of going to dinner with the team, I just went and had dinner with my parents, and like had a little night where it was just dinner with my parents and their friend John. And it was perfect. It like reset me, the exact thing that I needed just to like get myself out of that negative space and then be ready to like focus the next day. And the next day I felt great, but I never drove the car because Gavin qualified it and then Gavin crashed it. So
Womp womp.
I never got to like figure out if I fixed my mental state a little bit, but I was feeling really good that day. And I never got to figure out if I nailed my pit stop because we never did one.
I think I'm sure you have a lot of takeaways, and I'm curious to hear them. But listening to that, my main takeaway from that is you have to be like you have to vouch for your own space for you to be successful. So, like for instance, if they're chattering and they're like, if just there's too many radio communications, like you have to like come over and be like, guys, let's have the same amount of radio communications, but like 25% as much, or like whatever. Like I need a tenth of the radio chatter or something, right? Like where like an amount where they have to pick and choose what relevant information to give you instead of just a constant stream. I've had to do that like an endurance go-kart thing where it was like every lap I was being told something and I'm like, "Hey, I just tell me if I'm getting to the leader or I'm about to be lapped." Like I'm good with that information because it's just a bunch of go-karts on the track. I don't know who like what is an important spot, what isn't. So if I hear that every once in a while, then like cool, I can go chase them, but I don't need to know like what my lap time was and stuff like that, right?
Right.
So and maybe with the driver change or something, did you bring up about the seat insert not flinging the belts and that's why it's getting all weird? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
what you do about the driver change thing because obviously something about it wasn't gelling.
Yeah. My main takeaway, other than like the root cause of it being the belts, like it was a very practical change that we could have made. When I asked about it, they didn't want to. They didn't want to like change the process for what they're so used to, right? So I think the ultimate like why nothing ever changed was because it I got the sense they didn't want to change that much. So I just had to work harder to like assimilate.
Yeah.
But yeah, and like all of that was obviously more dramatic in storytelling than in reality. But in my head, in the moment, all of those things were definitely there, and it was just like I kind of had this fantasy going into it, like you do the high hopes, low expectations. Well, I had my secret hopes would have been like, okay, this new Audi's better than the old one. I've watched them on track. They drive away from me in exits. They're so much faster. It's going to be amazing. I'm just going to go out there. Maybe I can like put in a good time and practice and look like I, remind everybody I'm fast in this. And that just didn't really happen because we didn't do a sim in a way that allowed me to go like wildly fast on any session, or it just didn't play out that way. It was just like the car was fine. We were kind of mid pack on pace. We thought our late run pace was really good. So I think I got my hopes a little higher than I should have with
Yeah.
that. Like, in theory, I'm just going to walk in and it's going to be amazing. And then also I was kind of the root of why I felt like there was tension. Like I could not get this freaking driver change right. So I just got in my head about it. Um, but the part of it that I enjoyed way more was watching John and Gavin work together, because John was still there coaching for Gavin, and I was basically able to kind of coach me a little bit too. And that one was more collaborative. He was super super respectful about like he didn't just like treat me like he needed to coach me, but he would look at things on data and ask me questions and make sure that I was like he would challenge my thought processes a little bit and stuff the way I would hope someone would allow me to do for them. Like when you and I worked together,
Yeah.
it was really cool. He was super helpful, but the stuff that they were talking about, I took a couple notes on like things that uh they were consistently bringing up. The main thing that he rooted his coaching for Gavin in was min speed points, which we've talked about before on here a little bit. But that also came up with Salil when we were going through one lap, and it was a really helpful thing for him. Do you know what I mean when I say min speed point?
Yeah, it's like the maximum rotation point of the corner, right?
It's an interesting way to say that. I mean, kinda.
I mean, it
It's the
is.
point at which your minimum speed happens in the corner.
Yeah, and at the minimum speed is when the car can have its tightest radius.
Sure. That's why I think it's an interesting way you said that. That's not how I would have said it, but you're right. So it's uh you can move that min speed point in within the corner. Generally, if the min speed happens early, then you're going for a late apex and a good run on an exit. And if your min speed point happens really late, you're adding entry speed, and then you're finishing your rotation and corner exit late, right?
Yeah, you gain
And
some on entry, but you lose it on exit, or you lose some on entry and gain it on exit.
yeah.
Yep.
And the root of all of the things that John kind of gave Gavin notes about wasn't necessarily technique, or like there wasn't a lot of variety in what he said. It was all in moving the min speed point around to achieve what they wanted,
The
which I thought was really interesting.
yeah, like creating the optimal shape of the corner.
Because it wasn't, yeah. So for example, it wasn't like, well, you're braking a little too early or too late for this. It was your min speed points happening a little too early or late.
I
And
like the
then
way that's phrased because like that's another way to say like make an optimal shape for the corner, but it's a little bit more concrete in what that shape should look like.
Yeah, and it's so specific in what it's focused on that instead of telling the driver, okay, in this corner brake later, in this corner turn in later, and in this corner do something else, it was like we're shifting the min speed point in 3 different corners, but that's all. Like it's the same thing, you know. I don't know that I'll be able to change it, but it added a little tool on my tool belt that was like that's a good little way to verbalize that for someone that it clicks for.
Yeah, me and Peter Schnorr were talking about something like that. Tom, I put in a run on Saturday that would have won nationals. I don't know where that run came from, but like it was the best autocross run I did the whole year by far.
You did that before. You told me the same thing last weekend about the
Yeah,
Akron event.
both of those, if I did one on day one and one on day two, I would have looked like a hero. But like those runs didn't show up at nationals, so
Wait,
yay.
what did that have to do with min speed?
So I was talking with Peter about like changing very slightly the entry that we come into the corner because it allows us to carry the brakes farther into the corner to the point where we can actually get on throttle. So it's being more efficient with the weight, where the weight can stay on the nose, so you get more turning to the point where we can then get on throttle. But in order to get that shape of the corner, we had to give up a little bit right before that so we could get the correct angle to carry the brakes into a point where we could get on throttle. And that was like that's how I was getting like so much more time on Peter in just this one particular event. And it was an interesting conversation that we had looking at the squiggly lines on Solar Storm to try to, and I think it's a difficult thing to explain about, like, because I think I have a good feel for it of like the give and take on specific corners, but I don't know if there's a way to like break it down in like a flow chart where like it like works for everyone all the time. You know what I mean? There is a lot of like
Right.
a feel and nuance to that. The way I ended up uh like basically trying to sum it up was we want to be efficient with the weight. If we can make a corner where the weight is on the nose and then it moves alongside to the door where we get on throttle and it does that once, that's probably going to be optimal than if you have to like split it up into two different like sections where you have to get on throttle to get to the next part and then you put the weight on the nose and then you accelerate out.
Right.
So it's so that to your min speed point kind of reminds me of that conversation I was having just, at
Yeah.
Indianapolis in IMSA.
Yeah. I mean, that's okay. So I was on a podcast last week. I actually re-listened to it and I'm really, really proud of how it turned out. I was on the Garage Heroes and Training podcast, which I've done a couple times, and they wanted to talk about sprint racing versus endurance racing. And they brought up some really, really amazing questions that I had never verbalized about endurance racing. Just things like, what do you mean when you go out and you drive 8/10 versus 10/10? Like in an endurance sense, what does that actually mean? Because they were basically under the impression that in an endurance scenario, like with enthusiast cars or grassroots cars, like you just have to go drive 7/10 or else they're not going to make it. But in pro, you can just go 10/10. And I was like, well, first of all, we'll get to that. But he kind of framed the question in a way that was like, you're important racing. How is that different than our not important racing? You know, we only do this other little kind of racing, but you do this important racing. So
Yeah,
how
yeah,
is
yeah.
that? And I was like, wait a second. No, it's the same thing. What we're doing is the same thing. It's just people are convinced that one version is more important or worth watching and the other one's not. But it's the root activity of driving a car on a racetrack is the same everywhere you go, whether it's SCCA and Grid Life or NASA or IMSA or Lemons. Like it's just buffering expectations based on where you are mostly. And then we obviously went into like, okay, you don't just get in the car and drive 7/10. You're driving certain aspects of it to 7/10. Anyway, it's worth listening to. I think I enjoyed re-listening to it, but
What's it called?
why did I, why did I go there? It was the Garage Heroes in Training podcast. You've been on there before, I think.
Yep. Yep. I talked about,
Um,
what did I talk about? I think I just talked about sim racing.
maybe they're really good about bringing guests on for a good reason. Like they don't just have guests on for no reason.
Yeah. Like
Um,
us.
yeah, we try to have guests on for a good reason, but every once in a while we just want to talk to our friends.
Yeah.
I forget where I was going with why I was on that podcast or where.
We were talking about the min speed point.
Because no. I wanted to point out that like you're saying we're talking about this in IMSA as if IMSA is more important than something else. It's like the same thing, you know.
It is the same thing.
It's the stuff that happens off track that can get you or like the different dynamics that can happen on track, maybe every once in a while, but for the most part, it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's like, the reason why I brought that up is like we're having the same conversations at a local autocross event that like pro racers are having at Indianapolis. Like that, I think that's just
Yeah.
cool.
The last part that was fun to watch was because I'm watching John do data. They had like the big screen in the hauler office. So we're like sitting in the air conditioning in the office, like looking at a 60-inch screen with all the squiggly lines. And he had the video synced up with it. It was like super, super legit.
Cool.
But he's going through it, and I'm obviously like able to follow him basically or look at my own stuff over his shoulder. So that that allowed me to understand what he was filtering to, like what battles he was picking to like bring up when he would point things out to either of us, because when you're doing your coaching, you kind of have to pick, like, usually you pick one thing. If somebody's really strong or
Yeah,
comfortable, you can pick like two or three.
you can't point out every single little thing, or it's like first off, it just feels like you're picking on them, and then also, they're not going to be they're not going to be able to fix all those things. So you just pick the thing that will be the best bang for the
Right.
dollar. Yeah.
So watching John filter what he was going to relay to me and Gavin from looking at data was pretty interesting too, because it gave me a perspective on what he thought the most important changes were to be.
Hmm.
Uh,
That is interesting.
there was never one that was like wrong or right, in my opinion. It was just like, I see why he wants you to focus on that, but is ignoring that other smaller thing.
Yeah.
The best example of that would be Gavin was really struggling with placing the car exiting turn one, which at Indianapolis road course is down the front straight the wrong way for the oval, and then it's a hard right, and then a slightly shallower left, so it's like a chicane almost. And you have to give up the exit of turn one just a little to make turn two in a TCR car. And Gavin was struggling with the amount of space that he needed to give up to be able to attack turn two appropriately.
Was he lifting too much in
But I
between 1 and 2?
No, he was going all the way to the left, so he had no angle on the second part of turn
Yeah,
two,
yeah. So
like
he had to
the
lift too
left.
much. Yeah.
Exactly. Um, but it was interesting to watch John ignore that for the most part, because there were other smaller things that were like, okay, that extra little bit of throttle up into turn two was not a big fight. Uh, that was the best example I can think of. But
Yeah.
that was a fun
He
thing to watch.
he might also know John really well, where it's like, okay, he's gonna iron that out. Like I don't have to bring that up. I know that he knows
Exactly.
that that's a mistake.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the last part of the whole weekend that I thought was like really impressive was that team has a system for, like, maybe not a system, but a prep process that's like nothing I've seen in any other team I've worked with. They have documents where they go through, track specific information before the race. And instead of going through like, here's the driver's meeting, they're going through picking all of the points in a race scenario where your break points, if you're obscured on the left, they also match one on the right. Ironically, he still missed one and hit somebody, but
No. Dang
anyway,
it.
I've never thought to do that. I've never thought to, like, okay, I know my break point on the left, but I'm going to pick something that matches it on the right just in case I can't see.
I don't know
We picked break points for pitting in. We picked break points for pit exit to make the first bit of the chicane for pit out.
Yep.
We watched the race start from last year. We picked out, like, okay, why did these cars end up where they did? What are the good choices to make? Like, they relived and prepped for scenarios that most people don't. Whether it's important to do that or not, I don't know, but I was impressed with the thought, because I've never thought to do that.
The extra breaking point, I can kind of see it to some aspect, but most of the time you can just move your car a little bit, look through their windshield, get some kind of visual reference of where that brake marker is. You don't necessarily need to see it because you understand the spacing and where you are in relationship to
Yeah.
it. Have you ever
So you and I think
that's what
I
you
never
do,
have
right?
either. Yeah, I've never had that struggle, but imagine you're working with somebody who isn't the most good at, or there isn't the strongest at their reference points as it is, and then you throw them into race starts and they struggle. Maybe picking out dual brake markers on both sides of the track and extra reference points would help, or maybe it would make them fall apart. I don't know.
I
The
feel
fact
like
that they
I feel like it'd be
thought to
too
do
much.
it, I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I feel like it'd be too much to focus on.
Yeah, it was mainly like, we were driving down the front straight, and if I can't see the 5 because I'm popped out to the right of this guy, like, there's also a mark on the wall on that side.
Yeah,
Uh,
maybe I could see it like maybe into the best passing zone. Not like
Mhm.
every corner, but like best passing zone.
No, no, no.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was just breakpoints. What was the other part that they prepped about, and I never thought of this.
Are you giving away all their secrets?
No, it's just a basic prep process.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
So they're not going to listen
I
to
don't
this
know.
and be like,
If they do and they get mad, I'll be impressed they found it. Uh, I guess that was about it.
"Hi."
But it was a positive weekend. I really wish I could have raced and like tried to show my stuff. The cars that it ended up being this like fuel battle at the end, but the pace of the cars looked like we would have been very competitive. It would have been down to like race strategy, which our incident ended up causing like ripple effects in the strategy of the race. So it's hard to say whether
Yeah, yeah, true,
we
true.
would have done like special or not, but it was cool to be there. I
Did you
feel like every time I show up and I'm reminded or everybody I remind everybody that I exist, it's like a little extension on my life of Tom O'Gorman, comma pro driver.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you didn't get to qualify, right? Cuz you weren't starting. Is that normally how that
No.
works?
Yeah, the qualifying driver has to start, and generally for a 2-hour race, TCR cars can go an hour on fuel. So generally for 2 hour, you'd have your slower driver start, your faster driver finish.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, because cautions, it doesn't matter if you're leading the lap in the middle of the race. It's just the one at the end of the race is the one that's important.
Right. In SRO, when they do these races where there's teams of two, mainly in GT4, they do two races instead of one, and it's only an hour, and they have to start a different driver both days. So both drivers start, both drivers finish. And it's
Oh,
like a strategy call of like which day do you start your pro or your start your AM? You know, that's a little different.
yeah, yeah.
This one's almost always the AM qualifies.
Gotcha. So cool. Wow. Uh, hmm.
That was my weekend.
Yeah, there's so many things to think about there just with the prep and getting in your own head. What is your takeaway of like how to not get in your own head?
So the reason I mainly got in my own head is because I started to get the energy from others that I wasn't meeting expectation. That's what it boiled down to. And I wouldn't have really been in my head too much if I didn't get that energy from others, but I think I put the energy from others on myself. Like they weren't actually giving me that. It's what I did with what they were saying and doing to like deduce that they were somehow feeling like I wasn't meeting expectation.
Did you feel like a little bit of
I
an
don't know how to
imposter?
no, I wouldn't say imposter. It was more like I would just if I had no reason like it started because I could tell Gavin was over driver change practice. And
Yeah.
it was because he was hot and he's been in the car he was already in the car for practice. He had to get back in all of his stuff. We were doing it for like an hour and he was like over it. And I was the one that couldn't get it right. So I started to get the fact that he had to like call it and like I'm too hot, I need to get out of my suit and stuff. Layered onto then messing up, layered onto then internalizing the feedback that the other spotters were giving me as like a reason they were telling me because I looked like I didn't just like getting in your head, internalizing all those things.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know how to really do that other than my process is I get quiet, I get very focused, and until I get the chance to do it again, I'm probably not going to snap out of it. But it's about being patient enough to like not dwell on it, just like acknowledge that that's how I'm feeling, and then hopefully get the chance to fix the mentality by being really focused on the prep. Did that make sense?
Yeah. Sorry, excuse me. The reason why I bring that up,
Bless
the reason why I bring that up is
you. Goes tight.
I need a cough. Hold on. I'm muting. That was not me coughing. That was Tom McGorman making fun of me coughing. Anyways, because I think once you get in your own head, it is really hard to get out of your own head. It's like we've all been there. Everyone listening to this podcast, and if you tell me that you haven't, I know you're lying. But where you're at a party and you start to feel like weird, like you're the weird one. And the moment you feel
Right.
like that, you're like, crap. Oh, no, 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 no. No, I feel like I'm the weird one. Oh, crap. Now I'm the weird one. Oh, I'm definitely the weird one. Oh, they looked at me and laughed. Are they laughing at me? You know what I mean? Everyone,
Yes.
everyone here has experienced that. And I feel like like getting in your own head about like some kind of like performance competitive thing or whatever, it feels exactly the same as that, and I don't know how to get away from that. So I was hoping like maybe some Tom like Jewel could fly out and like help us all with that, but
Well, like that's where, like I said, my process that I've at least settled into is being okay with feeling that way until I get the chance to fix it again. And then like it's almost what can I control, what can I not control? Like the thing that my mom always says, going back to that. I can't control whether I can do a better job of that thing right now because I don't have any chance to do it until the race tomorrow. So the best thing I can do is, maybe accommodate my mental state by being distracted by going to dinner with my parents instead of the team. Uh, but I try not to let it escalate. It's just like this is where it's going to be until I get the chance to fix it.
okay, not
That's
letting it
not a. I don't
escalate.
love that.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking I'm thinking it through right now, and the best approach to it might just be like self reassurance that like okay, I know this doesn't look good, but this isn't my best. Like I'm better than what I'm currently showing right now. I know that they don't know that, but like that's fine. Uh, at some point in the future, whether it's this weekend or some other weekend in like they'll the more they get to know me, the more that they'll understand that I do know my left from right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like I think
Right.
if you have like that inner belief and inner confidence that you're not weird at that party, it's like, okay, I feel weird, but I know that I'm not weird, or at least not super weird where I should be getting laughed at. And if they are, then
Right.
that's their problem. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like a self belief of like I can do this. Uh, I belong. That like strong inner feeling could help make up
Yeah.
for if you're feeling like the weird guy at the party, essentially.
I also have a defense mechanism of being my own worst enemy with it, or my own worst critic with this stuff. And if I feel insecure about it, I verbalize. Like I try to be the first one to the joke. I noticed, or the first one to the critique. I've noticed that as a pattern as well. So
Yeah.
usually I'm getting reassured by the other people. Like I kind of shared some of this stuff with a couple of the team people, and they were obviously like reassuring me that there was nobody's annoyed. You're not a problem. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever they needed to say. So that's a little bit of a defense mechanism too. But yeah, ultimately knowing that, like it to me it just boiled down to focusing on those two variables where like my left and my right. I literally was like visualizing like when I pull this, where's the root of this radio wire? Why does that keep getting tangled? What am I, and it was like I had to do like left hand unplug and goes up and then right hand comes down. And I kept doing it opposite, so I had to like root cause analysis. Literally like where are these two things coming from and just like do that hand motion over and over and over again. And then the other part was the belts aren't flopping out. So I have to like look in the thing, make sure they're not in the car, in the seat, make sure they're where they're supposed to be, then sit down and then do the rest. It boiled down to like two very small things.
Yeah.
Once I identified those two small things and knew I'm not going to get to fix that until the race or the next session, it was easier to not like dwell on. But it didn't help still to like kind of feel less like plug and play pro than I wanted to be.
I think there's always a little bit of even when like you're autocrossing with somebody that you've never autocrossed before. There's always like that little bit of awkwardness, like getting used to like the way they do things, and like just a race with a lot of eyes on it, just like compounds that kind of awkward, like feeling each other out portion of that, right?
Sure.
So I think it's just maybe if you went in with the expectations of like, okay, there's gonna be some like oddities and weirdness here, and then like when you're like messing up the belts, you go like, this is what I expected. Like here's some of that
Yeah.
weirdness. You know what I mean? So it doesn't like catch you off guard. So then it doesn't start weighing on you. You just kind of anticipate that there's gonna be like a feeling out, and there's gonna be some stumbles, but like you're capable of learning from those things, and like you like you've it's you haven't came across anything yet that you haven't been able to figure out, right? Like this is another one of those. So I think
Yep.
probably that like self belief right there would help you not be the weird guy at the party as well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, all these experiences are like that constant pursuit of excellence. You know, you learn something new every time you go to somewhere.
Yeah. I I
Put that
always
on a shirt.
I always find
That was the dumbest quote ever.
I always find that like when you go into situations like that, if you're going in with the expectation that like you're gonna learn a ton from this experience, you tend to perform better as well too, because you're more of a sponge for information, and that information comes into play to like boost your performance at some point. But if you go in with the expectation of like being a high performer, then at least in my experience, like I find that you're you tend to not be as consistent as performance as you normally would be. But if you go in thinking this is a new situation and there's going to be a ton to learn here, and that is your focus, then you tend to have a better performance in the aftermarket in the aftermath.
Right.
Too much work.
Too many words. Trip Skywalker asked, "What's wrong with being weird?" Nothing's wrong with being weird.
It's
I
literally
enjoy being
nothing.
weird, actually.
There's
But
literally nothing. But when you feel weird, that's the problem.
yeah. So yeah, that was my weekend. I don't have any other updates. I don't think. It was fun to do. I still hope I get to do it again.
I'm
You never know
sure
when the
you
last
will.
one will be, but
Wait till the story of seatbelts spreads through the paddock, Tom. That might be the last one.
they're they're gonna be like, just do any series he can't do a driver change. Oh no.
Yeah, now Tom just gets to go do sprint races in GT3 cars. Ah, dang it.
Hell yeah.
Is there a series where they just do like, I think that's like DTM, basically just DTM, where it's just one driver in a GT3
SRO
car?
has one. SRO. Oh, maybe they don't. I think SRO has a single driver GT3 race. Maybe
Somebody in
they
the
don't.
chat let us know if you know if you know of one, because I don't know of a single series where it's GT3 cars, but there's no driver change. Same with I think there's GT4. There is GT4. That in SRO, I don't think I think they have GT4 races without a driver change. Or
I
am I
just realized I don't know how SRO works anymore. Matt, oh no. Matt Wallbaum says that's GLTC in 2027.
a little more rule creep? Next thing
Yeah.
you know, you need two drivers to afford one car.
Yep. Oh no.
I mean, I a good percentage of the GLTC weekends I've done is another driver. So happens.
Right.
Dude,
Should we do what? Go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say team driving like a GLTC weekend is really fun. Tom's like, I wish I could do the whole weekend.
No, no, don't worry about it.
Okay.
Should we do a little email?
Yeah, hold on. There was an email that came in.
Did we get an actual email?
We got an actual email.
Dude, we should have printed it out, like made a big deal of it.
Yeah, hold on. I'm gonna go grab it.
While DJ is grabbing that, just a quick reminder that we have merch. There's a link in the description. As far as I know right now, everything's 20% off until today's Tuesday. Everything's 20% off until Friday. And we also have a Discord server where you can listen live and chat with our friends. And I think that's it. We also have emails. You can ask questions at podcast@lizardbrain.life.
I think
Find
that's it. Yeah. All right. Emails. All right. So this one came in from Chris Gallagher. Says, "Hi DJ and Tomo, long time listener, first time caller. Your podcast is the best, obviously." And his obviously was in the email. I didn't say that. And I'd love your thoughts on the following. I'm a quote unquote new track enthusiast with about 15 track days under my belt and a few autocrosses decades ago. I have been running my MK7 GTI, which is basically stock. That was a super fun dual purpose car. Drive the kiddos to daycare and then keep going and drive to the track. That said, it was as earlier. Hold on, I'm struggling in the reading bit. That said, it was as earlier this year we had an off and I met a wall. Luckily, I am fine, and honestly, it was shockingly okay. Drove me home far away, but it was totaled. So he hit a wall and then drove home in the car. That's pretty badass. Um, I bought
While it was
a
totaled, that's wild.
yeah. Well, if the frame's tweaked and they can't get it back, then it might be totaled. But I bought a what does PHEV stand for? Is that like a hybrid? I think that's a hybrid, right?
Plug-in
Oh,
hybrid electric vehicle.
yeah. Okay. I bought a plug-in hybrid vehicle as my new daycare drop-off car, but now I'm dying for a track car. I was hoping you could weigh in. One option that he suggests is a dedicated GTI track car. It holds its own wheels. I understand the platform, good for track camping. A DSG version would allow my wife to track it as well. She did 2 track days in the first one, but wasn't hooked. And then the second one, she was super hooked. And he has FCP Euro as a place to buy parts. Cons, not really a good track day car. The other option he has is Miata, more foolproof, lots of support. Consumables are cheaper. Convertible, small, fun, potentially towable by a light duty truck, which we don't own, but may in the nearish future. Cons, it's old. Wife can't drive a stick and can't camp in it. Hold on, it keeps going. Or the DJ and Tomo third option. Ideally, 15,000 would be my max, but I'd love a track car that was $7,000 or less. I'm a change brake pads / entry level mechanic, not much further, willing to learn, of course. All right. Basically, he wants to know a like $10,000 track car.
That's getting pretty restrictive at this point, which is really sad, isn't it? Like that budget.
Yeah, because like the things that come to mind for like maximum fun on a racetrack is like an NC Miata. Those are like basically good factory to just go rip laps, right? Um, Probably an FRS, but you'd have to get an oil cooler, at least.
Mm. Yep.
Uh,
A Panther, a cop car.
oh,
Oh,
you could do one of those.
you could get a cop car. No, don't do that. I was gonna say something like a 10th gen Civic, but those are gonna be out of budget then. So you're looking at like 8th gens, which are probably still out of budget and starting to get hard with consumables. So I don't know
I
about
feel
that.
like a completely
I don't
stock
know an
one.
automatic I would recommend for that either. Like what automatic
Oh yeah, I didn't think about the
DSG
automatic.
DCT style car would even be under 15 grand? That I wouldn't recommend any of them. I was gonna say something maybe like a Hyundai, like those the Hyundais with the dual clutch,
Yeah, but
but that's
that's
like a new $50,000 car, so that's wrong.
well, they're like 30,000, but yeah, that's still talking about like the Elantra N, right?
Yeah, just
Yeah.
because it's like a modern car that has a dual clutch that could maybe do okay.
Yeah, the thing is
Um,
any older cars with a dual clutch isn't going to hold up very well. Like
no,
maybe
you
the
don't do that.
GTIs, but like I feel like the GTIs probably aren't the most reliable track vehicle either. So
That's a tricky one. I feel like MX-5, like NC MX-5 and FRS BRZ are probably the leading options at the price range.
yeah, but you're not gonna find an auto, but that's fine. Like driving a stick isn't that difficult. It's something to learn. So I don't know how like anti manual your wife is, but I feel like I don't know. It can't be that hard. Just you don't even have to heel toe right away. Like
Well, actually, Raul said the clutch is super forgiving on the twins. Honestly, the gearing is such that you usually only do 3-4, 3-4, 3-4 on a racetrack anyway. So after you're moving, you're just going up and down.
yeah, true.
Better than an MX-5 where you might have to do like 3-4-5-6 in a 6-speed. Um,
Yeah, maybe at least 3, 4, or like, yeah, 3, 4, 5. I don't know if you'd get the 6,
yeah,
but unless it's a
I don't
really
remember if
fast track.
my dad had a 6-speed, and I remember shifting literally constantly all the time, and
What
I daily drove an NB 6-speed that was the
I
same.
was gonna say an NB 6 speed, absolutely, you would probably have to go to 6.
Yeah. Um,
We have people in the
yeah, I don't know
chat.
if we have any other great options. We're getting some option or some like opinions in the chat, but no like viable. We don't have useful recommendations.
Oh my god, Tom.
Well, we got Fit, we got Mazda 2, and then Matt's with 4-cylinder super with body damage. Yeah, okay. And then GTRs are not very reliable. Uh, Chad Martin says a C6 vet. C5s are getting close,
Wait,
but I don't know
to
if you want a
10 or
30-year-old car yet.
no, what C6 vets getting down to like the 10 grand mark? Chad, did you just out yourself as a filthy rich dude?
No, they are. You can get a
No,
C5, not a C6,
not a
but you can get a
C6.
C5 for under that.
I feel like a C6 like LS2 like base model is still like $18,000.
You can get a rough one for this budget, but
Oh,
that's the point. Is
he
like you
says
don't want to buy a
auto.
rough one.
He says auto. That might be
Oh,
that might
oh,
be getting
oh,
close. All right. Now you know what, Chad? You understood the assignment. We're messing it up.
oh. Oh, Dylan, great option of the SECA Club Spec Mustang. That's probably in there as well.
So you could
Oh, hang
probably
on. I wanted to ask you. You drove the Club Spec cars at Nationals. Do you want to do a little tangent on those? Were they fun?
we can, but they're more expensive than you think it would be. I drove a club spec Miata and it drove great. It drove like a slower ND STR car, which makes sense because that's kind of what it is. Um, but like you could just track the crap out of it and it would just take it forever. Um, but when I inquired, and this Miata was pretty clapped, but like it was in good mechanical order, right?
Okay.
It's like perfect. It's perfect for a track car. When I inquired how much money was into it, it was like mid 20,000s because it had a hard top, it had like a roll bar, it had all the things. It was like it was fully maxed. There's nothing else you could do as part of like the spec part of it. So it was
Hmm.
mid 20,000s for a NC that like needed some help. And it got the help. It just you can tell it was like a very cheap shell, right?
What about the Mustang?
Those Mustangs are kind of expensive. They're above 10 grand. Maybe you can find one that's like super clapped for like just under 10. But you'll probably need to do like a diff rebuild because those diffs like wear out and then you get one wheel peel everywhere. If the trans isn't healthy, you're probably gonna have to like update the synchros and stuff on that just so like it can actually shift. You'll need the tune, all the kit and stuff. You're gonna be like mid 20s on that one as well. So I think they're great values, but if we're talking like the $10,000 range, I don't know that you're really limited there. If anything, I would be like maybe save up for double that, and then you can actually have something that's relatively cool, or completely stock FRS with an oil cooler.
Dang, you just got accused in the chat of being a car guy with all that.
Oh, I guess I definitely did sound like a car
No,
guy
it's
there.
good. Yeah, I, that's what I'm coming back to is like that budget is getting really tough with this era of motorsports enthusiastness.
Even like an NB or like unless you get like a really ragged you know what?
Guys, wait, hang on. I got a hot take.
Yeah.
Go. You
Okay, hold on.
finish your thought.
I'm still a little on topic. We're thinking of cars that can still be driven on the street. Those are worth something because they can drive on the street. If you got something that is terrible to drive on the street, but is great to drive on a racetrack, that is the best $10,000. Think of all the $10,000 race cars. Like there's some like
Oh yeah.
yeah, I'm talking like a neon. Like you could get a neon for like 5 grand, right?
Yeah.
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 You could get two neons. You and your wife could drive together. Um,
You could get a PT Cruiser probably. You
okay.
could get like a Saab.
I'm being serious.
Most Saabs.
I'm being serious. You're not. You're not a serious
No, I'm.
person.
Uh, My hot take is there. Can we all agree that there's no NA or NB Miata that's worth anything more than like $2,000? Dude, those cars are so old and they're so slow. We need to give it up. They're not worth that much money. Like
But
we all just need to agree. Let's bring everything down and then all of us can afford everything again.
but
That's my hot take.
if it's spec Miata, it's like at least 70 grand for a winning car, Tom.
No, it needs to just we need to stop
You're
all
so
that.
triggered.
The farsity, the it's a falsehood. There's no NB Miata. I've never driven an NB Miata that's worth $10,000. We need to stop with that.
Matt Waldbaum in the
I'm
chat
smiling in
says
case you can't hear me.
Matt says Bartek Borowski's eye is twitching somewhere and he doesn't know why.
I'm just spitting truth here. We need to reassess our like old car valuing. That's a little on topic. Come on. I'm not just goofing.
I think a yeah. I don't think you go like old Miata unless it's like an NC. You might be able to find like an ND. You can definitely find an ND Miata Auto for under 15K. And then that way you avoid the bad transmission because the transmissions, the manuals blow up on those cars.
Mhm.
You get the auto. I don't know how much fun it will be, but it's an ND Miata. Those engines are pretty good. That might be the best option.
Maybe.
That wouldn't be too bad.
I hmm. Let us know what you do. Keep us posted.
Yeah.
You're our current favorite emailer because I think you're the only one that we've gotten in a while.
We have some
Everything
other
else is
ones
on
in
Discord.
here. No, we have some other ones in here too. Like Adam.
Should we do any more?
Yeah, like Adam Lors.
Okay.
He wrote in. Oh, hold on. He says, I'm not sure if this should be read on the podcast. Um,
Are you making up your mind?
yeah, I'm debating if I read it on. I think I read the name wrong. It definitely wasn't the name I said before. It was a anonymous podcaster that wrote in. Not sure if this should be read on the podcast in case any CAMC guys listen, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Looking at the times between F Street and CAMC, it's interesting to see how they're pretty close. I get that KMC ran later in the day. Maybe the conditions might have been as good, but with basically an open rule book for KMC, I feel like those cars should be quite a bit faster. I know Tom is great and all, but he would have gotten second in KMC with a stock Camaro.
Okay. Wait, that was the take?
That was the take.
That's the question?
That's what was emailed in.
There's no question. It's just an observation.
It's just an observation. Do you have any thoughts, Tom?
All right. Well, hang on. I do. Yeah. Okay. So I was talking with Mike Leader about this actually. Mike's the guy who finished second in F Street with me. And he's owned a number of these muscle cars. If we're talking autocross classing and you're still listening somehow, it's basically Camaros and Mustangs in both classes. And one of them is an open rule book with 200 treadwear. One of them is a specific rule book that's much more limiting. So I was talking with Mike about this, and he was like, I kind of want to go to like a different class and like modify this car in a way that like I would like to modify a car. But every time I do the value add to the car from a performance perspective, it's not worth it because the car is already so capable. And fundamentally, there's not like a one thing that you can just like make it do better. So that's where I feel like Cam, part of the magic of Cam is that it's just like the open rule book that no one's really chasing and maximizing. I think that's probably a good thing. If anybody was, it would be ruined. But also I don't know what you would do for the potential on these cars other than you just need to like start hacking the bodywork up with the biggest wheels and tires you could fit and start throwing a crap ton of horsepower and then like aero. But when you talk about autocross versus a stock version of that same car, it's still, in my opinion, you're not moving the needle crazy like you would be when you hack up a Miata and you put it on slicks and you add power and all this stuff, right? Like the ceiling is different. So I don't think it's fair to say that Cam is not like whatever. I don't even know what he was saying, but it's not like F Street is amazing and Cam sucks or something, if that's what he was implying. It's just like, I don't know where the ceiling of these cars are, and all these people with Cam cars are just doing whatever they want to them, and they're competing with them. The car that won is like a full prep car. It's like wild, and he beat me by a lot. But for the most part, it's just people who are like, hey, I had this Mustang, I was doing F Street with it, or I was doing track days with it, and I like kind of wanted to try a wing, so I have a wing on it, and now I'm in cam. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think like it's two different audiences of like competitors. Like I think Cam is full of like the tinkerers, like mess with the car, like really um and I'm sure there's people that are interested in their driving in there too. The people that are attracted
Well, of
to
course, yeah.
yeah, the people that are attracted to like the street class and they've really like like the very pointy end of that class, those are people who they're not focused on the car, they're only focused mostly on their driving, so their focus is narrowed down into driving the car. That they're not spending their time and effort uh, like tinkering on the car.
I don't know if it's fair to say that. I think it's just fundamentally it's very similar cars on the exact same tires, grip limited to like what are you going to do to a Camaro or Mustang to make it go faster? Going to add power, and then like what else do you? I don't know. I don't.
Well, also I don't think, like, besides that one car that did set a faster time than you, I don't think those cars are like you were saying, they're not that much different than what a stock Camaro
No.
would be.
Right. And then like, okay, you give a Camaro 700 horsepower and then you put it on the autocross course, like how much more usable power do you actually have? That's where I'm saying like I just don't think the ceiling's that much different.
Yeah. Well, then you could have like if somebody went like nuts with the KMC car, like you could, because the rule book is really like unlimited, but like you said, most cam cars aren't, like, they're not actually taking advantage of the 100% open rule book to just go like buck wild.
Right. Like there's a minimum weight, I think it's 3,400 pounds. My car weighed 3,700 pounds at nationals without me in it. So you're talking within 500 pounds. But like, I don't, there's not like one major thing you throw at a car like that without putting it on grippier tires because it already has so much power and you can't make it that much lighter versus like all these classes where you can take weight and throw slicks and all that. That's where you see the actual pace.
Yeah.
But all that to say, yes, you can do a really good job in cam with a stock car, whether you have a stock C6 or C7 in Cam S or a stock Camaro from F Street in Cam C. Like it's because the ceilings are similar, in my opinion.
Okay. Tom, I think you dodged that one. You get
Vote for Tom.
yeah, what the hell? Did you just do a debate?
I didn't want to get in trouble this week. Okay, I do that enough.
I do that enough. Tom, you want to talk about truckers in the next email?
I got lots of thoughts about Indiana from this weekend. You want to hear those?
No, let's keep
I'm
it
kidding.
good.
I'm kidding.
Let's keep it good. Actually,
Wait, are we?
we should probably wrap up.
We should. I'm having fun though.
Well, then we'll just
Well,
keep
who
it
let
going.
me have fun? No, I'm kidding. We should wrap up.
Okay.
What are you doing this weekend?
I'm going to a wedding.
Oh,
I know.
someone you like?
That's family. It'll be fun.
Kidding.
It'll be
That's
nice.
such a loaded question.
It will be nice seeing my sister and my nephews. But the bummer is that there's an autocross event 5 minutes from my house that I'm driving away from.
Bummer.
Bummer.
What day is the wedding?
Saturday. And the autocross event is also on Saturday. If it was on Sunday, we would have found a way back. But it's literally on the same day.
There's no other events on Sunday?
I couldn't find any. Did you know of one?
I don't. I'm going to Laguna Seca this weekend. For Grid Life. And then
That's this weekend?
Uh-huh.
Oh. That'll be fun. Wait,
Yeah.
are you going directly from there to runoffs?
Pretty much. Yeah.
That's fun.
I'm gonna pack this microphone this time. I promise.
Yay! That's how I was
Yeah,
gonna
so I
remind
go-
you.
I have no plan at runoff at Laguna, but I put it on my calendar and I stuck to the commitment of going. There's some people I know I want to like meet and spend time with, and there's some Bridgestone stuff I can do. So I know it won't be a bust, but I'm not like in GLTC or something. And then yeah, fly back, go straight to the runoffs because I'm on the commentary team for the 7th year in a row. It's very cool.
That's
Woohoo.
fun. I always enjoy listening to the races they do. I went there with Hawk last year, and it was fun hanging out with you. We're not doing that again this year, so Womp
Bummer.
womp. Yeah, it was fun. Last year we barbecued like Hawk. Me and other Hawk employees, we like did a barbecue in the paddock, and that was fun.
Yeah, you guys hosted a like part of the party, right?
Yeah, it was fun. But
That is cool.
this year, like it's just we just don't have the people available, and it would just be like me. Hi,
Yeah.
I'm the party.
Well, if you want to come, let me know. So how does that work? We're gonna record during the qualifying days, like usual. We've done that the last 2 years.
Yeah. Yep. Um, we'll have to. When are we recording the podcast next week, Tom?
Either Tuesday or Wednesday.
Okay, sounds great.
And then, and after that, I remembered, this is the last little thing to end on. I have a friend named Will Rogers who I met racing in B-Spec, and he is now a like
I'm just kidding.
NASCAR. No, it's too early, too early. He's like a NASCAR guy, and he does Trans Am as well. And we talked about ovals enough. I asked if he would be on, and he said yes. So I think we're gonna try to have him on in the next 2 or 3 weeks too.
Hell yeah, I get to ask him about Shady Bowl.
Yep.
Like,
He's gonna be like, what?
Will Rogers, is Shady Bowl gonna set me up for NASCAR?
You're right.
How do I get into the Winston Cup Car Series?
Yeah. When did you first race at Shady Bowl, Will Rogers? So yeah, if you have questions about oval racing or Trans Am or anything for a guy that he's also, fun fact, the only guy I never beat in all that pro racing stuff.
All right.
He beat me every time.
Maybe
So if you want to ask any questions to this guy, email us or put it in the Discord.
Maybe we'll have an after show without Tom, so we can ask Will what his secret is to beat Tom McGorman.
He had a better gearbox in his Mazda 2. That was it.
Yeah? Is that what he's going to say?
Sure. No, I don't know. I don't. That's what I'm going to say.
Okay. All right. That should be a fun one. That one's, that's not next week, but the week after that, right?
Yeah, it'll be 2 or 3 weeks after this, depending on how the schedule shakes out.
Are you going to be able to go to the Chili Bowl?
No, I can't. I'm working
because you're doing
racing somewhere.
You're doing the runoffs that weekend.
Oh,
right.
Yeah. The runoffs goes through 5 p.m. that day.
I wasn't sure if like on Saturday or Sunday you would like come up or something, or somehow you're everywhere all the time. So I thought maybe there was a chance that Tom would show up.
No, that one's a little limited by physics.
Gotcha.
Time and space.
All right, Tom. Well, it was nice catching up with you, and thanks everyone for joining us today. We appreciate you, all of our audience that has stuck with us live. We appreciate all of you. And Tom, you want to take us out?
Yeah, I got a good one this week. When you go to this wedding this weekend, would you please dance with your sister? I love your hair, and I hope you win. That's for you, Gina.